Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into a smart feature in Rails enum attributes.
That's right.
Our goal here is to show you how using them can, well, bring a whole new level of clarity to your code. We've got some great resources lined up.
Yeah, they really explore this well. And basically, Rails enums, they let you use these like descriptive names for attributes.
Human-friendly names.
Exactly, human-friendly names in your code, but behind the scenes, they're stored efficiently, usually as integers.
Right, like think about a blog post status, maybe
Yeah.
draft, published, archived, something like that.
Perfect example. Enums give you a structured, kind of elegant way to handle those fixed sets of values.
And the big win for listeners really is cleaner code. Code that's just easier to read, easier to maintain later on, and less prone to those silly bugs from magic numbers or typos in strings.
Definitely. Avoids a lot of headaches.
So yeah, we'll cover the setup, how to use them, the advantages, some more advanced tricks, best practices, pitfalls, the whole deal.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What are enum attributes, fundamentally?
Good question.
Well, at their core, they map these symbolic names you use in Ruby.
Like published.
Exactly, like published,
Mhm.
to extra values stored in the database. It's super useful for any attribute that has this, predefined limited set of states.
Like order statuses,
Right?
processing, shipped, delivered, things like that.
Precisely. Or user roles, content types, you name it.
So instead of storing the full word published over and over,
Yeah.
the database just holds a number, like maybe one.
Right. It's more compact, can be faster for lookups. But in your code, day to day, you work with the meaningful symbol, .published. Much nicer.
And you mentioned this came in Rails 4.1.
Yeah, Rails 4.1. So it's been around a while, very stable, well understood feature.
Okay. And the benefits for code logic, you touched on that.
Oh, huge benefits. It immediately cuts down on those magic numbers or magic strings floating around in your code.
Where you see a status of 1 and think, wait, what's a 1 again?
Exactly. With enums, it becomes something like post.published. It's almost self-documenting right there.
Much clearer.
And it simplifies queries, conditionals become cleaner, and it adds a layer of safety too, ensuring you're using valid values.
Okay, let's get practical. How do we set this up? Let's use that blog post example.
Yeah.
Status.draft, published,
Right.
archived, first step.
Right. So typically you start with the database. You need an integer column to hold the value. So
Okay.
you'd run a generator, something like Rails generate model, post title.stringbody.text status.integer.
Right, standard model generation.
Yep. That creates the model file and, crucially, the migration file. The migration adds that status integer column to your posts table. And then you run Rails db.migrate.
Makes sense. Database prepped.
Yeah.
Now, how do we tell the post model itself about these statuses?
Okay, so you open up @models post.rb, and inside the class you use the enum keyword.
Ah, the magic enum method.
That's the one. You'd write enum status, draft, 0, published, 1, archived, 2.
Simple enough. Draft maps to 0, published to 1, archived to 2.
Exactly. That one line defines the enum, sets up the mapping between the symbols you'll use, draft, etc., and the integers 0, 1, 2 that actually get stored in the database status column.
All right, defined in the model. How do we use it now? Creating a post, for instance.
Super easy. Once it's defined, Rails gives you helpers. To create a post, you just use the symbol, post.create, title, my post, status.draft.
Ah, okay. You use the symbol, not the number.
Right, and when you want to read the status back, say post.status, Rails gives you the string version back, like draft.
Convenient. And I remember reading about helper methods for checking the status, like Boolean checks.
Absolutely, predicate methods.
Mhm.
For each value, draft, published, archived, Rails automatically creates a question mark method.
So post.draft.
Yep, post.draft returns true if the status is draft, false otherwise. Same for post.published and post.archived. Really cleans up your if statements.
That is much cleaner than if post.status equals draft. Definitely. What about finding all posts with a certain status? Querying.
Also built in, Rails generates class-level query methods, or scopes, effectively.
Oh, nice.
So post.draft gives you all draft posts, post.published for published ones, post.archive for archived.
And that returns an active record relations, so you can chain other things.
Exactly. You can chain .where, .count, whatever you need. It's very flexible, like post.published.where, created at 1.week.ago.
Cool. And changing the status, if I want to publish a draft?
You can just do post.status.publish and then post.save. It's standard way.
Okay.
But Rails also gives you bang methods for convenience.
Ah, the exclamation mark methods.
Right. So you can just call post.publish. That updates the status to bot published, so stores one in the DB, and saves the record immediately. One step.
Oh, that's handy. Post.publish, post.archive, post.draft.
Precisely. Saves a line of code, makes the intent very clear.
Yeah, it really feels like enums streamline a lot. Let's circle back to why this makes code cleaner. Can we see some side-by-sides?
Sure. The biggest thing is eliminating those magic values. Remember, if post.status equals 0.
Yeah, the what's zero again problem.
Someone reading that has no immediate idea what 0 means without looking it up. Compare that to if post.draft. The intent is instantly obvious. Same with avoiding magic strings like published. One typo published and you've got a bug.
Good point. Less guesswork, fewer typos. And conditionals. Checking multiple states.
Yeah, imagine checking if a post isn't live. So it's either draft or archived. Without enums, maybe if post.status.draft post.stat is archived. A bit wordy, right?
A little bit, yeah.
With enums, it's just if post.draft.post.archived. Much more concise, reads better.
Definitely easier to parse. Database queries, too, you said.
Yeah, same idea. Post.where.stat2 versus post.archived. The second one tells you immediately what you're getting. It makes your data access layer much more expressive.
Right, context is built in.
Yeah.
And you mentioned data integrity. How does that work?
Well, because you've defined the only valid values, .draft, .publish, .archived, if you try to assign something else, say post.status.invalid state.
Which isn't in our list.
Right. Rails will raise an argument error right there. It stops invalid data from even being assigned at the model level before you even try to save it. Helps keep your database clean.
That's a nice safety net.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the basics down. What about some more advanced stuff? Customizing the integer values. Why do that?
Sometimes, the default 0, 1, 2 doesn't fit. Maybe you're integrating with an older system or an external API that uses specific codes.
Okay. Like maybe draft has to be 5 for some reason.
Exactly. You could define it like enum status.
Yeah.
Draft. 5. Pending review. 10. Published. 20. It lets your Rails app use the nice symbols internally, but talk to the outside world using their numbers.
Useful for bridging systems, but maybe stick to 0, 1, 2 if you can. Keep it simple internally.
Generally, yeah. Unless you have a strong reason like integration, the standard sequential mapping is often less confusing long-term.
Got it. Now, Rails 7 plus string enums sound really interesting.
Yeah.
Storing the actual words.
Yeah, this is a great addition. Instead of storing 0, 1, 2, you can choose to store draft, published, archived directly in the database column.
Why would you do that? Just for readability in the database itself.
That's a big reason. Makes debugging or running raw SQL queries much easier. The data is self-explanatory. Also good if you're migrating from a system that already used strings.
Okay, how do you set that up?
Yeah.
You need a string column first, right?
Yep. You'd need a migration like change column .posts .status .string. Then in your model, you tweak the enum definition slightly.
How so?
You add a string.true at the end, enum status.draft, draft, published, archived, 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 string true. Now Rails knows to store and expect the string values.
Okay, that seems straightforward enough. Cool option. What about combining enums with scopes for more complex queries?
Very common and useful. Say you often need posts that are active, meaning draft or published.
Right.
You can define a scope right in your post model, .scope.active, where status.draft publish.
Ah, neat. So you pass an array of the enum symbols.
Exactly. And then anywhere in your app, you just call post.active to get those posts. Keeps the query logic DRY and readable.
Nice. And using enums for like state transitions?
Yeah.
Moving a post from draft to published?
Yeah, they can work well for simpler state machines. You could add methods to your post model, like a publish method.
What'd that do?
It might check if draft, and if so, call published. Similarly, an archives method could check if published and call archived.
So encapsulated the logic in the model.
Right. But if your transitions get really complex, lots of states, callbacks, specific rules, then you might want to look at dedicated state machine gems like ASM or Statesman. They offer more power.
Okay, good distinction. Use enums for simple cases, gems for complex ones. What if a model needs multiple enums, like a user having a role in a status?
No problem at all. Totally supported. Your user model could have enum role, admin is 0, editor, 1 viewer, 2, and also enum login status, active, U, inactive, 1, locked to Jira locked.
You just define them one after another.
Yep. And you get all the helper methods for both sets, user.admin, user.editor, and also user.active, just.locked. They work independently.
Clean. Now, Prefixes and suffixes.
Yeah.
I saw those mentioned. What's the deal there? Avoiding conflicts.
Exactly. Imagine you had two enums, maybe status and publication status, and both had a value like .publish. Or maybe you just have another method called archived in your model already.
Ah, the method names would clash. Publish could mean two different things.
Precisely. So when you define the enum, you can add prefix.true or suffix.true, or even a custom prefix-suffix string.
How does that change the methods?
If you did enum status.post, prefix.post status, your methods become post status draft, post status published, and so on.
Ah, it namespaces them. Post status or maybe state at the end.
Right. Prefix.true uses the enum name, suffix true does too. Or provide a symbol like .status or state for a custom prefix suffix. Really useful for keeping things unambiguous, especially in complex models.
That's a smart feature. Prevents headaches later. Okay, we've seen how to use them. What about best practices? How to use them well?
Good question. Few key things. First, use descriptive names. D is bad. Draft is good. Obvious but important.
Right, clarity.
Second, maybe add comments. Document what each enum value means in the context of your application, especially if it's not immediately obvious.
Good idea. What else?
Use them for small, fixed sets of values. If the list of options changes constantly or gets huge, maybe a separate related model is better than an enum.
Okay, don't overuse them.
Right. And test them. Test the assignments, the scopes, the predicate methods, any transition logic you build around them.
Standard testing advice, always good.
Handle invalid values gracefully. Think about what happens if bad data does somehow get into the database. Maybe have default handling or logging.
Defensive coding.
Yeah. And like we discussed, consider string enums in Rails 7 Plus if database readability is key. And use them for simple state transitions, but know when to upgrade to a state machine gem.
Makes sense. Solid list. Now, the flip side. Common pitfalls. What trips people up?
Okay, number one is probably the database dependency. Changing things later can be tricky.
Like switching from integers to strings or changing the integer values.
Exactly. You need careful migrations to update existing data correctly. If you change publish from 1 to 10, you need a migration to find all ones and update them to 10, otherwise your app breaks for old records. Planning ahead helps.
Right. Think it through up front. What else?
They don't automatically validate input at the controller level or guarantee database constraints usually. While assigning an invalid symbol raises an error in Ruby.
It might not stop someone sending, say, the integer 99 in a form post if you're not careful.
Potentially, yeah. Or saving a record directly bypassing some checks. So you almost always want explicit model validations too. Validates.status, inclusion.in, statuses.keys. That ensures only defined values get saved.
Ah, crucial point. Add the validation.
Yep. Then there's method name collisions, which we covered. Use prefix or suffix to avoid them. Performance can be a consideration, but usually isn't an issue unless you have very large tables and complex enum-based scopes. If you do see slowness, indexing the enum column is the standard fix. Add index.posts.status.
Simple fix if needed.
And finally, legacy data. If you add an enum to a column that already has data, maybe it contains values like nil or integers you haven't defined in your enum map. Loading those records can cause errors.
So you might need a data migration first.
Right. Clean up the old data, map it to your new enum values, or handle nil gracefully in your code.
Okay, these are really good things to be aware of. Avoidable problems if you know about them.
Huh.
Could we maybe tie it all together with that post example again? Maybe add another enum like visibility.
Sure, let's refine the post model. So we have enum status, draft 0, published, 1, archived, 2, prefix.post status. Let's add enum visibility. Public 0, private 1, prefix.post visibility.
Okay, two enums, both prefixed.
Then add validations. Validates.postStatus, inclusion.in, poststatuses.keys, and validates.postVisibility, inclusion.keys, postvisibilities.keys. Note how we use the pluralized prefix names there. Post statuses, post visibilities.
Ah, Rails generates those helper methods too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Then we can have scopes like scope.active, where poststatus.draft published, and scope.publicPosts, where postvisibility.public.
Okay, and maybe a simple transition method.
Sure. Def publish, post status published, if post status draft.end, uses the prefix methods.
Right. So creating a new private draft post, how would that look?
You do. Post.create title, sequence body.draft, post visibility.private.
Using the symbols with the prefixes and the attributes seems odd. Oh, wait, no, you use the original symbols for assignment, right? The prefixes are for the methods.
Exactly. That's a key point. You assign using the original symbol.postStatus.draft. The prefix applies to the generated methods like post.postStatusDraft, which would be true, and post.postVisibilityPrivate. Also true.
Ah, got it. Good clarification. And querying all public active posts.
You just chain the scopes, post.active.public posts. Super readable.
Yeah, that really shows how it all comes together. Prefixes, validations, scopes, transitions, much cleaner state management.
Definitely. It makes handling these different states and querying them much more organized and less error-prone.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Rails enums, they really do feel like a fundamental tool for writing better Rails code. Cleaner, more robust, easier to follow.
Absolutely. By swapping out those, ambiguous numbers or strings for clear symbols, they simplify so much managing state, writing conditionals, querying data. It just makes things clearer all around.
So for everyone listening, as you work on your Rails projects, take a moment. Look at your models. Where could an enum make things clearer? Where could it replace a magic number or string? Implementing them could really improve your code base almost immediately.
Yeah, and think about whether string enums might help your database readability or if prefixes could prevent future naming headaches in your more complex models.
Great final thoughts. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.